24 hours. That is the entire window Tasha K had between stepping to a microphone and watching a trap door open beneath her feet. She did not see the floor disappear. She did not feel the mechanism click. She just kept talking, kept dropping the T, kept swearing her sources were airtight. And somewhere in a Manhattan high-rise, a woman named Cardi wasn't even angry. Cardi was smiling. Because this right here, this entire sequence of events, stitching Tasha K, an NDA, a quiet eighth baby rumor, and an influencer who suddenly forgot how to tell the same story twice, this is not a coincidence. This is a chessboard, and the pieces are moving in a pattern so precise it looks almost manufactured. Lean in, because what unfolded this week is not a gossip cycle, it is a surgical dismantling disguised as a slap fight, and the surgeon is wearing lashes and a red bottom heel. Let me peel this thing back layer by layer because the surface headline says one thing, but the undercurrent says something radically different. The headline, the one TMZ ran, the one every aggregator is recycling, reads like this. Cardi B has formally petitioned the court to impose judicial penalties on blogger Tasha K for breaching a non-disclosure clause buried inside her bankruptcy plan. Cardi claims Tasha has breached that clause at minimum 25 separate times. 25! That is not a slip. That is a pattern. That is a rhythm. And inside the filing, Cardi's attorney, Lisa Moore, lays out a campaign she calls a sustained pressure operation aimed at Cardi and anyone orbiting her, executed through commentary designed to be decoded by Tasha's 1 million-plus audience as aimed squarely at Cardi. Read that twice, because Cardi's team is not arguing Tasha named names. They are arguing she did not have to. They are arguing the audience already knew the code. And that is a very sophisticated legal theory for a commentary dispute. Now, pause the legal lane for a moment, because here is where the ground starts vibrating under the entire story. The two names specifically listed in this filing are Offset and Stefon Diggs, Cardi's still legal husband, currently making headlines from a hospital bed for reasons we will dig into in a minute, and the quarterback her name has been tangled with across every timeline for months. Two men. Two very loud, very messy news cycles, and one blogger who somehow cannot stop mentioning either of them. Before we interrogate whether this filing survives a legal pressure test, flash back with me. Rewind to the earlier courtroom war between these two women. Cardi won that case, and she won it decisively. But the reason she won is the piece nobody repeats enough. When you come for a public figure in a defamation suit, the bar is not a speed bump. It is a mountain. You have to prove the statement was false. You have to prove the person saying it knew it was false. And then, the heaviest lift of all, you have to demonstrate what the law calls actual malice. The speaker proceeded anyway, fully aware of the wreckage they would cause, and did not care. That last part is usually where cases dissolve. Not in Tasha's case, because somewhere in the evidence pile sat a recording. A recording Tasha made with someone she considered a close friend, where she is heard laughing, cackling, saying Cardi has money, she can afford therapy, so what? That recording was the smoking gun. That recording handed the jury the malice requirement gift-wrapped. And that recording is the reason Tasha ended up on the hook for millions. Here's the question nobody asked loud enough back then. Why did that friend, that so-called close friend, suddenly appear with a secret recording tailored almost perfectly to the legal standard Cardi needed to meet? Why did the recording contain exactly the language Cardi's team needed to cross the malice finish line? And why did that friend cooperate in a manner that felt less like spontaneous conscience and more like a choreographed handoff? I am not telling you it was orchestrated. I am telling you the mathematics of that moment never added up for me. And now, years later, we are staring at a sequel with eerily parallel beats. Drop into this week's timeline. A young influencer, a woman named Tiffany, begins hinting, implying, dangling breadcrumbs across her socials that she is welcoming a baby. And the quiet suggestion, the whisper in the comment section, is that the father of that baby is none other than Stefon Diggs. She doesn't say it directly, she posts maternity shoots, she captions things with lines that can be read two ways. She lets the audience connect the dots. And the audience, already fatigued from Stefon's endless reproductive news cycle, connects those dots at lightning speed. Fans flood the comments tagging Stefon, congratulatory notes, side eyes, jokes about the man repopulating the eastern seaboard single-handedly. The implication becomes fact in the court of public scrolling. Entered Tasha K. She does what she does. She claims multiple sources, not one, multiple, all in close proximity to Tiffany, all confirming the same story. This is baby number 8, and Stefon Diggs is the father. She runs it. She reports it as verified. She stakes her credibility on it. And then, within a window so tight it feels choreographed, Tiffany pivots. She goes live. She tells her audience this is not Stefon Diggs' child. She walks it back with the same hands she used to hint it forward. The whispers reverse. The breadcrumbs dissolve. The story Tasha reported, sourced and stamped with her brand, now stands exposed as allegedly false. And Tasha, staring at the wreckage, issues a statement defending her sources, insisting they spoke to her with conviction, insisting she believed what she was told. Watch that sequence again in slow motion. A hint dropped, a blogger grabs the hint, multiple so-called insiders confirm it, the blogger reports, the source of the original hint publicly denies, the blogger is left holding an unverifiable story with her professional credibility sitting in the blast radius. And Cardi's legal team, already documenting every mention of Offset and Stefon across Tasha's platforms, now has a fresh, bleeding entry for their exhibit. Pull back the lens. Count the echoes. Last time, it was a friend with a conveniently timed recording. This time, it's an influencer with a conveniently reversed story and multiple sources who now refuse to stand behind what they told Tasha. Both scenarios end in Tasha in the kill zone. Both scenarios feature a perfectly placed catalyst. Both scenarios activate the exact legal ammunition Cardi needs to either win a case or tighten the noose on a settlement. If this is coincidence, coincidence has a very specific taste, and this situation reeks of it. Now, here's the part that forces a harder question. Is Cardi's current petition actually bulletproof? Strip it down to the studs. Can you really muzzle a commentary blogger for discussing Offset when Offset is, at this precise moment, stretched out in a hospital bed doing photo ops with paparazzi outlets, releasing handwritten notes that look like greeting cards, and drumming up headlines about his own casino habits? The man is running his own publicity tour from a recovery ward. He wrote a note, "Life is a game, keep on winning," that looks almost calculated for engagement metrics. There's a strong argument that TMZ handed him the pen and whispered the caption in his ear because nothing about the framing feels organic. It feels like a man who needs checks, printing checks from a hospital gown. So the argument that Tasha mentioning Offset constitutes harassment of Cardi runs into a wall. The wall is called "He is the entire news cycle." Every blog is covering him. Every aggregator is posting him. Every fan page is dissecting him. If discussing a person splashed across every outlet from New York to Atlanta counts as harassment, then the entire internet is guilty, and every talking head from TMZ down to the smallest commentator is exposed to the same liability. The law does not usually operate that broadly. It requires specificity. It requires intent aimed at the plaintiff, not commentary aimed at a public figure who happens to be tangentially connected. Then there's the Stefon angle, and this is where the filing gets structurally shaky. Stefon is not family, not in the legal sense, not in the sense a judge interprets when weighing harassment of a plaintiff's loved ones. A romantic partner who has not married in carries no legal familial status, no matter how much a heart wants to argue otherwise. And that is one of the brutal realities women in long unmarried relationships eventually confront. The law does not recognize affection, only paperwork. To argue Tasha's commentary on Stefon constitutes targeted harassment of Cardi, the filing essentially has to stretch the definition of family until it snaps. And that is a lot of elastic for a judge to honor. But, and here's where it flips, none of that structural weakness matters if the real purpose of this filing is not to win in front of a judge. The real purpose might be to exhaust Tasha, to keep her in litigation, to bleed her legal fund, to force her to defend 25 separate entries, each requiring documentation, each requiring counter-argument, each requiring hours of attorney time Tasha cannot afford because she still owes Cardi $4 million from the first war. This is not a lawsuit designed for a clean victory. This is a lawsuit designed as a slow drip, an IV of pressure connected to Tasha's bank account. And if the so-called Tiffany situation was nudged into existence, if someone somewhere whispered a suggestion into the right ear knowing Tasha would take the bait, the drip just doubled in speed. Sit with that possibility, not as accusation, as pattern recognition. Cardi has not been the same woman she was during the first Tasha K trial. She has evolved. She studies, she reads filings herself, publicly. She has surrounded herself with attorneys who understand celebrity law and bankruptcy law, which is a very specific Venn diagram. She's been burned enough times to know the old playbooks do not work anymore. If this chapter is being engineered, it is being engineered by someone who learned the lessons the last round taught her. Those lessons were paid for in headlines, divorces, and one very public recording. Now, let me widen the frame, because Offset's arc in this saga is its own circus. Sources close to his camp are claiming he wants back roughly $12 million in gifts he allegedly showered on Cardi during the marriage. Cars, bags, properties, the full catalog of regret. And simultaneously, the federal angle, yes, federal as in the bureau, not a local detective, has reportedly stitched itself into Offset's ambush incident, a failed watch robbery that apparently elevated itself to a federal case the moment certain facts crystallized. Offset is said to be cooperating fully, which, in the street vernacular that dominates his social circles, carries its own specific heat. Cooperation and rap culture have a complicated chemistry. It is not a neutral word, it is a word that carries gravity. And it is in this exact environment that Cardi is filing motions against Tasha K. Think about the optics. Think about the timing. Think about what Tasha could have said, might still say, could have sources on, regarding Offset's cooperation posture, his casino circuit, his spending habits, his federal proximity. Cardi's legal team is not asking for penalties in a vacuum. They're asking for penalties in an environment where Tasha's next sentence could trigger cascading exposures. The NDA becomes not just a legal document, it becomes a gag, a muzzle, a mechanism to stop the spread before certain rooms start echoing. And this is why I keep circling back to Tiffany. If someone wanted to prove Tasha was a repeat violator, if someone wanted a fresh, shiny, dated instance to slide into a court filing, what better bait than a half-hinted baby story that Tasha's sourcing instincts couldn't resist? Tasha's brand is built on being first, built on confirming what others fear to print, built on the loud, confident declaration. Feed her a story that fits her pattern, watch her publish it, watch the original source retracted, and now you have a fresh documented error attached to Cardi's orbit through Stefon. You have Exhibit 26, maybe Exhibit 30. The filing grows, the violations mount, the pressure compounds. I am not stating this happened, I am stating the shape of it is familiar. And in situations involving celebrities with enormous legal budgets, pattern recognition is literacy, not paranoia. Step outside the legal theater for a minute and consider the human geometry, because this is where the story actually breathes. Cardi and Tasha, on paper, are enemies. On paper, they're ideological opposites. But strip away the lawsuits, strip away the years of commentary, and you find two women born with identical survival instincts. Both came up loud, both built platforms from nothing, both mastered the art of converting audacity into audience. In a parallel reality, they could have been running a podcast together and printing money. They could have been each other's most dangerous ally. Instead, they became each other's most calibrated opponent. And that might be the real tragedy threading through all of this. Not the money, not the filings, not the leaked recordings or walked back stories. The tragedy is watching two brilliantly stubborn women burn years of potential friendship on the altar of an industry that rewards the spectacle and punishes the repair. Back to the concrete, because rumor is not evidence, but rumor is always data. What we know at this hour: Cardi's motion is filed. 25 alleged breaches are cataloged. Offset is in a hospital, turning convalescence into a content strategy. Stefon is navigating a reputation bruised by endless reproductive gossip. Tiffany has issued a denial. Tasha is defending her sources in public. And the court eventually will have to rule on whether commentary about two very public men, one of whom is not even legally married to Cardi anymore, can be characterized as harassment campaign against Cardi herself. My read, for whatever it is worth, the motion probably does not survive a clean legal challenge on its strongest form. Judges do not love expansive theories when the plaintiff is a public figure and the commentary targets other public figures. But Cardi's team may not need it to survive on its strongest form. They may only need it to exist long enough to drain Tasha's resources, reshape the commentary market, and send a signal to every other voice orbiting Cardi's story that the price of speaking is now calculated in lawyer hours. That signal alone is worth filing for. And if the Tiffany timing was in fact manipulated, even lightly, then Cardi is not just playing chess anymore. She's playing chess on a board nobody else realized was set up. Which brings me back to the opening thought. 24 hours, the time frame between Tasha reporting the Stefon baby story and the entire narrative collapsing around her. That is not gossip speed. That is surgical speed. That is a well-resourced team moving in coordinated rhythm. Could it be coincidence? Possible. Could it be the universe delivering karma on a plate? Possible. Could it be something more engineered? Also possible. And in a cultural moment where public figures increasingly hire private intelligence firms, reputational warfare consultants, and narrative strategists who specialize in baiting opponents into legally useful mistakes, the engineered explanation is no longer the most outlandish one. It might be the most probable. One more thread before I close the loop on this. Notice who is not speaking. Cardi is not on live screaming about Tasha. She's not dragging her on X or IG. Cardi is operating through court filings, through attorneys, through the quiet machinery of legal paper. That alone should tell you something about the Cardi sitting in 2026 versus the Cardi who once live streamed her frustrations. This version is strategic, measured, patient. And that version of Cardi is significantly more dangerous than the one the culture remembers. Tasha K is also not screaming the way she used to. Her defenses read careful, source protective, legally aware, which tells you her own attorneys have told her the stakes have shifted, the environment is hotter, the margin for error is thinner, and if she is being hunted, she's being hunted by someone who has studied how she bleeds. 2 women, same survival genetics, different uniforms. One filing, 25 alleged violations, a hospital bed ex-husband, a quarterback with a crowded family tree, an influencer whose story evolved mid-livestream, and a blogger staring at a courtroom that has already chewed her up once and appears to be sharpening its teeth for round 2. Let me introduce another thread, because we cannot close this out without acknowledging the broader ecosystem Tasha operates inside. Commentary blogging in 2026 is not what it was in 2016. When Tasha first built her empire, the lanes were loose, the defamation bar felt distant, and the average creator believed the First Amendment was a fortress. Those illusions have eroded. Judges across the country have become more willing to entertain defamation theories against content creators. Platforms have become more willing to comply with subpoenas, and plaintiffs have become dramatically more sophisticated about using every legal tool available: bankruptcy compliance, NDA enforcement, injunctive relief, to reshape what a creator can and cannot say. The era of consequence-free commentary is closing, and Tasha, whether fairly or unfairly, has become the most visible case study of that closing door. Every creator watching this filing is internalizing a lesson, and the lesson is not subtle. Speak carelessly, source carelessly, and the machinery built around wealthy subjects will grind you into powder. That is the quiet chill running through every commentary channel this week, whether they admit it out loud or not. Now, layer in one more variable nobody has really foregrounded: the bankruptcy angle. The reason Cardi is invoking sanctions through the bankruptcy plan specifically, rather than filing a fresh defamation suit, is structurally brilliant. Bankruptcy courts have a very specific temperament. They're not about drama, they're about compliance. When you emerge from bankruptcy, you do so on terms. You agree to conditions. You sign on the dotted line that certain behaviors will cease. Violate those terms, and you're not just losing a defamation case, you're threatening your entire bankruptcy discharge. That's a different category of danger. That's a judge looking at you with the power to unwind wounds you thought were closed. That's a judge who can unwind protections you fought for. And Cardi's team chose that lane deliberately because a defamation case forces her to meet the public figure malice standard again. A bankruptcy plan violation motion does not. It only requires proof of the violation. The bar is lower, the leverage is higher, the pressure is immediate. This is the move of a legal team that has genuinely studied its opponent and built a trap tuned to her exact structural weakness. Zoom out further. Why Stefon? Why now? Because if you followed the reporting threads carefully, Stefon is navigating his own complicated moment. There is a looming matter involving his brother, there is a trial date circling, there is speculation about testimony, and there is a public appetite for anything involving his orbit. If Cardi is even tangentially connected to Stefon in the public imagination, every Stefon-related commentary becomes, by association, Cardi-related commentary in the minds of the audience. That association is the very mechanism Cardi's filing leans on. The argument is not that Tasha named Cardi directly. The argument is that Tasha's audience mentally connects Stefon to Cardi so automatically that discussing one is effectively discussing the other. It's a theory of audience cognition dressed up as a theory of harassment, and it's surprisingly creative lawyering. Whether a judge buys it is another question, but the creativity signals a legal team playing the long game. Whether this ends with penalties, with a settlement, with a dramatic reversal, or with yet another unbelievable twist, one thing is certain. The quiet war that lives underneath the loud war is always the one that decides the outcome. And right now, the quiet war belongs to Cardi. And here's the final ripple worth flagging before I hand this conversation to you. If Tasha is forced into a stricter silence by this motion, whether through granted penalties or just by the practical fear of accumulating more alleged violations, an entire section of the Cardi commentary economy simply vanishes overnight. Other bloggers will study Tasha's trajectory and quietly self-censor. Podcasters will reroute around Cardi coverage. Gossip accounts will scrub archives. The Cardi narrative, for the first time in years, becomes something Cardi herself controls, not because she muted the internet, but because she made the cost of speaking about her prohibitive enough that the market corrected itself. That's narrative sovereignty. That's the quietest form of power a celebrity can wield in a noisy era. And that victory never trends because it unfolds as an absence rather than a spectacle. Keep that framing in mind when you decide how you feel about this entire filing. The loudest war is rarely the one that matters. The war that matters is the one that rewrites what you can hear about a person for the next decade. Drop your read of this in the comments. Tell me whether you see pattern recognition or paranoia. Tell me whether Tiffany's reversal reads organic or orchestrated. Tell me whether Tasha had bad sources or whether bad sources were handed to her deliberately. Tell me whether Cardi's filing is brilliant legal pressure or legal overreach. Your instincts on this story are sharper than you think, and I want to see them. Bookmark this page because the next filing, the next reversal, the next leaked detail is probably 48 hours away. And when it lands, I'll be right back here tearing it apart frame by frame with you. Stay sharp, stay reading between the lines, and whatever you do, do not look away from this one, because the quieter the story gets in the mainstream, the louder it's getting in the courthouse hallways where it actually counts.